Hey, what's going on, everybody? So I wanted to tell you guys about a situation that I was in June in 2012. Well, I had to go to a women's shelter that was located in Sturgis, South Dakota. So there was me and my 3 kids. We were at the shelter. Anyways, they had a library, and I thought, let's go check out the library and get some books, because I love to read. Back then I was always reading to my kids. And we went there, and as far as I knew, because living in other cities and everything, whenever you get a library card, all you need is your ID. So then I went to the library with my ID, and I filled out the form and everything, and I got my library card, and I checked out a bunch of books for my kids. And then we went back to the shelter, and one of the girls there was asking me, did you get a library card? And I said, yeah. And she said, how? I said, what do you mean, how? Like, I have my ID. And she said, well, we're not allowed to get a library card because we live here, at the women's shelter. And I said, well, when you went to the library, did you tell them that you live at the women's shelter? And she said, yeah. I said, well, I didn't tell them that. I just gave them my ID, and they gave me a card. And she said, well, you're lucky. And I said, yeah, I guess. So then it was probably like 3 weeks, and I was going, back and forth to the library and getting books and whatnot. Then I went and returned some books, and I was getting more. And then the lady was like, so I'm going to have to keep your card. And I said, why? I said, I don't have no late fees. And she said, well, we had got a phone call that you live at the women's shelter. And I said, yeah. And she says, well, we can't let you have a card because you live there. And I thought, but I'm an American citizen, and I have my ID to show that. And they said, well, when you get your own address and your own house, then you can come back and we'll give you your card with your proof of address. And I thought, can I speak to your supervisor? Because, this is, I'm not understanding. And she said, well, she's not here right now. She left. And I said, well, can I ask who had called you? And she said, yeah. And she got a piece of paper, and she said it was one of the, I guess, the secretaries at the women's shelter. And I thought, no way. Why would the secretary call and tell you that to keep my card? So then I go back to the shelter, mind you, leaving the library with the books that my kids wanted, and then they couldn't get it, and they were crying basically all the way back to the shelter, which was like 6 blocks. And I want my books, Mom. And I'm like, I can't believe this. Like, I feel so like discriminated against, and I was very like angry, and I couldn't believe the shelter called and told the lady that. So then I thought, well, I'm going to talk to who she said called her. So then I went straight to the office. She was there, and I said, "Can I speak with you alone?" And she said, "Yeah." So we went into her office, and I said, "Is it true that you called the library and told them to keep my card?" And she says, "No." "What?" And I said, the library lady said that you called and told them to keep my card because you didn't, because we can't have a card because we live here at the women's shelter. And she says, "That is not true. I did not call them. I'll call them right now and tell them that they have no reason to take your card away." So then she calls. Of course, the lady's not there. The supervisor's not there. So then she's like, "Okay, well, I'll call again tomorrow." And I said, "Well, can you help me get my card back? Because this is not fair. And, why can't we have a card anyways?" And then she goes, "Well, I'll call him tomorrow." Well, tomorrow came. She didn't call him, or if she did, and she didn't let me know. So anyways, I was just like, for like a few months basically went by. And I thought, it was just like getting to me, you know what I mean? Like, I could have just let it go, and I could have just been like, whatever, like, I'll never go back to that library. But then I kept thinking, like, this is so wrong. Like, why can't they get a library card here? Like whatever they did, it doesn't pertain to me because I didn't do nothing wrong. I mean, when I had my card, I returned everything in good condition. So then I thought, well, I'm going to, like, I couldn't believe what happened, and I had talked to a close friend of mine, and he suggested that I talk to a lawyer, and he gave me a lawyer's phone number. So then I talked to the lawyer, finally got through to him, and then he says, "Well, it looks like it could be discrimination, but," he said, "you need to go and do everything that is possible to get your card back, which is write a letter to the mayor and, go to city council and go on the city council board and let them know what happened. And if everything comes back and the mayor don't want to talk to you and the city council turned you down, then we got a discrimination case, and call me back." So I thought, okay, that's all I needed. Like, I needed to know that somebody had my back and they were going to help me. So then, just knowing that alone, I went and wrote a letter, and I took it directly to the mayor. I walked in there, and me and my kids were sitting there waiting, and the lady was like, "I have no idea when he's coming back. Are you sure that you want to wait?" And I said, "Yeah. I have nowhere to be today. Yeah, we could wait." So we were waiting for about an hour and a half. Then the lady says, "Can I ask what you want to speak to him about?" So then I told her, and she goes, "You can go to city council and, present this to them, and they might give you back your library card." So I thought, that is exactly what I need to do. Okay, great. Yes. What do I need to do? She says, "Here, fill out this paper. The next city council meeting is in October, the first week of October." So then I thought, and this was August by then. So then I thought, okay, great. No, yeah, it was in October. So then I thought, great, okay. And then whenever I'm waiting for this city council meeting, because of course the mayor is going to be there, the night of that I had to be at the city council meeting. I was so sick. Like, I had the flu, I was coughing, I had a fever, I had a head cold, and like you're all congested and everything. I was everything. And I was like laying in bed and I was thinking, I am so sick. Like, I didn't really get out of bed that day. Like, my oldest daughter, she was 14 at the time. So she was helping me with the little ones. And then I thought, but I have to. I have to do this. I can't miss this, I have to be there. So I got up and I got ready and got my kids ready and we left. We went to the city council, and as soon as I walked in and I was the only Native American there, and I was, with my kids, and everybody was in suits and everybody was dressed really nice, and I'm just sitting there like sick as a mother with my kids, and I'm thinking I'm like way out of my league right now. Like, what am I doing? Like, what do I think I'm doing? You know what I mean? And I thought, just do it. Just do it. Just sit here. You gotta talk to them. You gotta let them know what happened. So I sat there, and then my phone started ringing. So then I was like, who's calling me? Like nobody ever calls me. So then I'm like, hello. And then it was the secretaries from the women's shelter. And they said, where did you go? Another girl that was staying there had let them know that I was going to city council meeting. So then they were like, why are you at city council meeting? And I said, well, because I'm trying to get back my library card. And she says, well, you were supposed to let us know and we can help you. And I thought, I did let you know. The day that they took my library card away, I let you know. I told you exactly what happened, and you just brushed it off. And she says, well, we're coming down there. Can we come down there with you and support you? And I said, yes. So then next, the two secretaries are coming, and one of them, sees that I am like sick and coughing and sneezing, and she's like, can I help you? Like, can I watch the girls? And I'm gonna take them back and, watch them there at the shelter. I said, yeah. So she took the girls, and then I was sitting there with the other secretary, and she had some paperwork, and I asked her what it was, and she says, well, this is our bill that we had paid the library, because they're gonna say that we didn't pay this, but this is the proof that we paid it. So I thought, okay. And then whenever they called me up, I was the last one to go up. And I went up there, and he said, okay, and the mayor was there, and he's like, okay, Francisca, why are you here today? And I said, well, first of all, let me just state that I am a American citizen, and I am living here in Sturgis, and I do have identification, and I went to the library and they had took my library card away because they said that the women's shelter is not allowed to have a library card. So then he said, well, why are we holding her library card? And then he looks at everybody, on the podium, or, sitting up there with him. Why are we withholding her library card? Then the librarian lady was there. She stood up and she comes over. She says, well, the women's shelter is not stable enough to get a library card because, they're not, they're not permanent. And with a permanent address. And plus, they owe a bill of $595. Then that's when the secretary from the shelter steps in and says, well, here's the proof that we had paid that off, and we paid that off 7 years ago. And ever since then, they didn't have a library card, the women's shelter. I was just like, you know, and then she moved aside, the librarian lady, and I said, besides all of this, I said, that it's a women's shelter, and we already been through enough, and then we have to go through more and get discriminated more because we don't have a permanent address, so now we get treated differently. And she says, well, that's not true. It's only because they didn't pay their fine. So then the mayor said, okay, well, the fine is paid. Let's just give her back her library card. And then the librarian lady said, well, she has to come to our meeting at the library, which was in October 31st in 2012. She said she has to come to our board meeting, and we'll go over it then to set up something. So then I thought, great, I gotta go to another meeting, and it was, all this, I kept thinking, all this for a library card, but then my whole purpose was doing it was because I thought it's not fair. It's not fair that we're already getting discriminated on because we're in a shelter, and because, a lot of women there already been through a lot of stuff, and then to get more discriminated. And I was just like shocked that this was even happening. But the meeting came for me to go to the library, to their board meeting. That came up, and I was working in a music store. And so then my manager at the music store, she showed up to show support for me. All of the women that worked at the women's shelter, they showed up. And even some of the women from the shelter showed up. So we had this room with one table full of, everybody was there. Then the supervisor for the library and a couple other workers, they came in. So then he was like, I thought we only were speaking to one person today. And everybody else was like, yeah, we're here to support. I thought it was really, awesome that they had my back too, And whenever he sat down, he says, okay, well, first of all, we're going to settle this, and do you have a ID with the women's shelter address on it? And luckily I did get one that month, and I said yes. So I showed him my ID, and he says, okay, so this is what I think, we can do. How we're going to settle this is I'm going to give the women's shelter a library card, and it's going to be one library card for the whole shelter, so everybody could take turns bringing it to the library. And I thought, no, that is not what I want. That is not what I'm asking for, because I'm going to get judged, So the reason why it says that, because what happened from the time being, those 3 weeks of the city council meeting that I had went to first, while I was leaving that meeting, one of the city council members had followed me out, and he told me, you're welcome to use my library card until you get yours back. And then in that 3 weeks, so I did. I used his card, and I went to the library, and I told them, well, I didn't really say anything. I just gave the card to her, and she looked at it, and then she, shook her head, and she looked at me, and she says, oh, you're one of them. And I didn't say anything. I'm just like, that was rude. So then this guy, his name is Matt, the city council member, he said, if they give you a problem, please give me a call. So then as soon as I left the library, I called him and I said, I just now used your card. And the librarian lady did give me an attitude. And whenever she seen your card, she said, oh, you're one of them. I'm not sure what that means, and I'm not sure what one of them is, but that was rude. He says, I'm so sorry. He said, yeah, that was very rude. I'm going to call them right now. And then, so then within that 3 weeks, I was using his card. So anyways, back to the board meeting with the library. He was trying to make a deal with the one card for the whole shelter. And I brought that situation up. And I said, I don't want to get judged. Like, your workers, they judged me. And he says, that's not true. None of my workers make judgments on anybody. And I said, yes, they do. One of them did. And whenever I came in with Matt's card that he let me use, she looked at that card and she says, oh, you're one of them. And he said, can you please tell me what her name was? And then she was sitting right across from me, so I pointed her out. I said, she did. And he said, is this true? Did you say that to her? And she says, well, I said something like that. And I said, no, you said exactly that. And she says, and she just looks down, and he was like, I'm so sorry about that, but we don't judge. And I said, well, what I'm asking for is I want to have my own card with my name on it. I want everybody to have their own card, because when I come in here with the women's shelter card, let's say the family before me or the woman before me used it, returned her stuff in bad shape, I'm going to get judged as a person of that don't take care of it, that take, I'm stuttering, that don't take care of the books, that don't take care of the movies. I don't want to be judged like that. I want to be judged based off of my own actions and not somebody else's. Well, he says, okay, so this is what I'm going to do. Everybody that lives at the women's shelter, they can get their own library card as long as they have a photo ID with the women's shelter address on it. So then I thought, that is awesome. So then I did get my card back, and that was a very huge accomplishment that I had made for that women's shelter, for them to, have, so they don't get judged, they don't get discriminated on just for being in a women's shelter. But the only thing that they do have to do is put an effort in to get identification with that address. Then they can get the library card. And I felt like, it might not be a big deal because a lot of people don't really care so much for libraries, but to me it was a big deal because it wasn't just about the card. It was just about, being being a human and being treated like a human, and being an American citizen and being one of the First Nation people, then get treated like that. It was, I could not believe that. I was not gonna just sit back and forget about it and let it happen continuously to more women that were in that shelter. But I just wanted to share that story with you guys, so you know that, don't just sit back and let things happen. Always be the person to speak up for yourself, stand up for yourself. Don't wait for somebody else to do it for you. Because that's what I kept telling myself. Nobody's here to do this for me. Nobody's going to take up for me. Nobody's going to speak and have a voice for me. I have to do everything for myself. And along with it, I did it for a lot of other women that were coming behind me. That's what I felt like, you know. Alright, you guys. I'm going to let it go here. It's starting to rain. And I got to haul some wood. Alright, Doksha.